This is really exciting for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with a hero of mine, a real true bona fide hero, a scholar, a gentleman, a producer, director, creative director, singer, songwriter, guitar player, everything player. He's handsome. Call him Ranch 'cause he's dressing. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Titanic Sinclair.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Keep that clap down. Everyone stop. Relax.
A true Renaissance man.
Dude, you do it all.
I have to credit Tommy English for that because he was he's actually the one who coined the term Renaissance man. Most people don't know that.
Yeah?
Yeah, in like 2017.
Dude, one thing I knew would kind of happen with having you on is you have a very, like when you talk, you've been talking online for a long time and you have this really sweet, kind of low-key chill, like when you speak, it's very like ASMR.
Oh, yeah?
You know, you got that voice you can go to bed to
Yeah.
or with. And like, I'm just, what's up, guys? I have like a Mr. Beast energy.
Yeah, you just hit the red on that one. That was very impressive. It doesn't take much for you to hit the red.
I'm a loud little dude.
Well, you got pipes.
Yeah. So, I think some of my viewers may be unfamiliar with you. Some of these, 'cause I'm quite famous.
Yeah, I'm not.
You're not famous. I'm a megastar.
Yep, that's why I'm here.
Just for the people who don't know you, obviously you have a very storied life and past and history and career.
True.
Saginaw's finest. Why don't you give just the people a quick, nice to get to know you, nice to meet you spiel.
I love drinking water and staring at grapes.
Yeah.
And occasionally I like to go into a grocery store. I notice you have Kroger here.
We have Kroger.
In Texas we have H-E-B. And I like to go and walk around and go up and down the aisles looking for items. And then I'll often write songs about them.
What is a song that you can cite that was inspired by a grocery store that you've written?
I won't call...
What was inspired by the
I was going to go right into Bohemian Rhapsody. No.
So you're a Texan by way of Michigan, Chicago, L.A., minor in Japan.
Yep.
And then
tried moving there and realized I'm not wealthy enough.
Not wealthy enough for Japan?
No, it's apparently it costs money to move places, and
money. What is that?
It's this thing I keep hearing about.
Is that thing I'm supposed to use to pay off all that debt?
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, how do you get it?
Just exploit yourself on the internet.
Yeah.
Set up one of those ring lights. And just say things like "ice cream so good," or
"ice cream so yummy,"
"gang gang," and money appears.
Yeah, well, I will say it's so. As someone who's been watching you on the internet for a very long time, I mean, dude, I found you when I was 14, and it's
Sounds
been
about
over
right.
10 years.
That's the kind of content I make.
Yeah. For children. Well, to be fair, I've always been 46. I've been 46 since I was 6.
That makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah. So my friends at school didn't get it. They were watching Smosh. And I was watching you.
Yeah, I was very early to the YouTube, I guess, universe.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that I could store videos online. For a lot of our viewers here maybe you're too young to remember services like PhotoBucket. And PhotoBucket was a place before the internet was as horrible as it is now. You had to actually store your content elsewhere and then use the hyperlink. Put it on your MySpace page or something like that. So YouTube came out and it was like, oh, wow, this is a great way to store my videos.
Yeah.
And then quickly realized that the communal aspect of YouTube was a way to get engagement. So you can engage the audience as we are engaging you right now with this engaging conversation.
This is engaging.
Engaging conversation for engaging viewers.
Yeah.
And started to put my music-related projects on the World Wide Web. Grew up playing in bands in Michigan, Saginaw, Michigan. And it was one of those things where I didn't, there was no one really in town. There was like one or two people who had the ability to record. And so I started to use GarageBand.
Yeah. I mean, you're like kind of, or not even kind of, just definitely one of the pioneers in terms of people using the internet and YouTube specifically to like build a brand and a career. And, you know, like it was so interesting for me, for someone who's followed you for a long time. You know, you've played quite a few different characters on the internet over the years, and to meet you and find out that you're like a regular person was very refreshing. Because part of me thought maybe you're gonna be like an android.
Yeah.
You know, but you weren't.
Yeah, that's been the well, I was pretty much in character until like 2020.
Yeah.
For everything, and I used to think that was a good idea.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I want to ask, because you know I still follow all your stuff, and like even in your comments, a lot of your fans find it refreshing that you're kind of being a human and being more yourself.
Yeah.
What was that transition like from like being a character and having all this crazy stuff to then just kind of letting yourself be yourself, and you know showing, you know, like there's an adorable video of you playing guitar for your son, and just, you know, people are like, he has a son, like he's a person.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought you were just a Ken doll android that was built in some freezer.
Yeah.
But has that been weird for you as someone who kind of rose to prominence on the internet as like a fake person, more or less?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it was. It was the idea truly was like to I was my own guinea pig, and I was like, well, it seemed to me, especially early on, people seem to respond to negativity more than anything. I was like, well, I'll just be the worst possible version of a person.
Yeah.
And I know that people will be like engaged by that. And then kind of like the sleight of hand was like, hopefully the music is good, and hopefully like the content itself is something that people would be interested in. And I guess the jury's still out on that, but like making that transition, it would have been, I mean, really, it was like the whole 2020 thing. You know, it seemed like to me there was such a large cultural shift, even just with like internet content and internet people. And I'm sure a lot of people who have been doing it for long enough, and maybe if they had kind of like a shtick or like a bit that they were doing, it seems like the world shutting down for a year or more. To me, it was just kind of like, okay, well, it was just a big life change, and I had moved away from L.A. I was in L.A. for so long, and came down to Texas, and I noticed that we're the product of our own environment. So being around people, the first thing I noticed in Texas was like the people at the cash register actually made eye contact with you, and I've started to have very like honest and real conversations with people.
Yeah.
And that's not to say there weren't real and honest, nice people in LA. There are, but I think for the most part, it's the plastic land, right? And I think that I had become so desensitized that it was very normal to just be a character, and whenever the camera's on, just doing the whole like straight face, blank, boring, you know.
Hi, I'm Titanic Sinclair.
Yeah, very synthesized.
Yeah.
But it's been very refreshing now, because I went from, there was really no true, there's maybe a couple interviews over the years where I'm like, I guess, out of character. But now I went from that and doing like 30-second videos, or very, very short videos where I would just basically repeat the same thing over and over. And then went away for a while, came back, and just started doing like, I do like hour-long episodes now where it's nothing but unedited talking.
Yeah.
And I'm on episode 33, will be next week. So
Titanic Talks.
Titanic Talks.
Check it out.
It's weird to think that there are like 32 plus hours of me just talking.
Yeah.
And even that's evolved, because, you know, you go through life and all of the ups and downs, and everyone, especially if you're in any sort of a spotlight, I know you can relate, people just have their opinions about your personal life and your public life. And, you know, it's an interesting situation now where everyone's just chronically online. And I feel like it's very refreshing just to have a place where, you know, I can at least give my perspective on life and things that happen, and hopefully that perspective is entertaining.
Yeah.
Because the really the main reason I kind of started doing it is because I felt bad talking Chelsea's ear off with all these like insane I don't know, ideas, ramblings, hot takes.
Yeah.
Just talking about how much I love or dislike mostly music related things. Because from a production standpoint and a songwriter standpoint, I feel like not that the perspective like you or I have is any better or worse than anyone else's. It's just it's a different way of looking at when you know how the sausage is made.
Right.
I think you are probably a better maybe alternative to like commentary people who don't do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask because you know you're from Saginaw, Michigan, which is a pretty small area. Yeah.
Ish.
I
think
know you spent some time in the outdoors and stuff as a kid. It wasn't L.A. You didn't have
Northern
some, like city childhood.
Northern Michigan. Oh yeah. Just 5 minutes outside of Saginaw, just nothing but cornfields.
Yeah. So when obviously you spent all that time in L.A. and just with this shift of your kind of public image into being more aligned with like your private image, do you think going to Texas, being in like well just not in L.A. in general, do you think that's kind of what helped make the shift happen, or do you think if you would have stayed in L.A. and stayed in that environment, you still would have gotten to a point where you were kind of just done with that phase of your internet persona?
That's a good question. I think it would be a coin flip. Legitimately, it would be. I would either dive in even harder and probably create a new character, and play into it even more, or probably just stop completely.
Yeah.
So I think just like it's just like anything else in life, you know, you make a big life change, especially if you're moving, you know, halfway across the country. That's going if you're a creative person, that's going to influence you no matter what.
Yeah.
And had I stayed, yeah, I don't think it would have been good for me. I think I was a rare exception with the whole Hollywood thing, where the thing that I went there to do, I actually did. And when and then you keep doing it, and then you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and suddenly you wake up and it's been 3 years of doing that thing, and it's profitable, and there's always that big spike, and everyone's always trying to like get to the next plateau or the next mountain peak, but you get to the next mountain peak and then there's another mountain.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was like time for reinvention for sure, because you know, I started to feel like I was kind of like beating the same dead horse, doing the same thing over and over, and you know, you do enough of the same thing and it's just like, well, this isn't really why I decided to start making things.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I've never toured as like for my own solo stuff. You know, it's I love playing with other people and other people's songs. But for my stuff, I'm always it's more so like I could be spending this time to make new stuff.
Yeah. Well, dude, I think you've been a part of so many cool projects. As a songwriter, director, creative director. I mean, you wear all the hats. You are a Renaissance man.
Thank you.
But I guess what I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about was the greatest project you've been a part of thus far, Southern Galactic.
Yes.
And I would love to just inform the viewers of how, from their perspective, and for anyone who knows me or anyone who knows you, and if there's any oddballs who know both for some reason.
There's like
which
at least 2 or 3.
There's got to be. There's like, wait a second.
Yeah, leave a comment.
Yeah, if you knew Titanic Sinclair and me before we sat on a couch together, what was that like for you? Because that must have been jarring. Because I'd consider myself to have a pretty broad taste in things I like. You know, I'm a very proud Southerner, and I am in many ways I am all the stereotypes. But in many ways, I'm not. I've always been that cool kid, and that's probably why I was watching your videos and going, I know art. I have taste. But I'd like to just touch on the pairing and how we got together, because 2021, I believe, is when you dropped Texas Dream.
Yes.
And I'd been following you forever, and I remember hearing that record, and like it's a country record. I mean, you don't have like a traditionally country voice, so it's kind of it's alt country. Would you say?
Yes.
What brought along your path? Because I mean, you've been in like kind of pop, like alt rock, alt pop, kind of everywhere, electronic music. What led you? Because I'm sure it shocked a lot of your fans when you started making songs with pedal steel.
Yeah.
What brought you to that point of making that country record?
That's okay. So with country in general, which I would assume probably a lot of your viewers that's kind of their main.
Hell rap, brother.
Yeah, it's probably most. If they were to pull up their Spotify or radio station, most likely it's something in that realm. And so I knew early on it was like I was going to be swimming against the current. But there was a couple moments where I knew it was coming. One of them being probably all the way back to maybe like 2017, 2018. And I had written a song, and I just had the chorus of it. And I just wrote it for fun, and it turned out to be my song, Blue Collar Red State. I can't remember the title of my own song, Blue Collar Red State. Yeah. And I showed it to a very prominent Hollywood songwriter who writes for a lot of like top 40 people. I was just in a session with this person, and I showed it to him, and they were like, never release that. They said, you can never release that. And immediately I was like, it was in my eventually get to this pile. And fast forward a couple years, and I was freshly a free agent. I wasn't working on anyone else's project for a while. I made a whole record that I never released, and it was very like industrial and aggressive, and it just didn't feel right to put out. And after getting all of that, it was like screaming and stuff. Yeah. And after getting all that out, I started to write really stripped down, bare bones songs. And somewhere along the line, I heard the whole 3 chords and the truth line. Yeah. And funny because we're literally looking at the album that got me into modern country, at least, which was Sturgill Simpson, Meta Modern Sounds, which that was like the first time I actually took any country artist seriously. Yeah. It completely blew me away. And I was just in a session in Hollywood writing, and yeah, it was at the time I was watching a lot of spaghetti western movies, and the soundtracks was Ennio Morricone who did Sergio Leone's scores, and I thought that the chord progressions, that was the first thing that I noticed, and they just gave me a feeling. And I started looking for, well, what other, where's that come from, and what other kind of genres or songs kind of give me that feeling, was almost anthemic, but sad, but triumphant at the same time. Yeah, that kind of thing. And that was for me the Texas Dream album that I did. I was like, well, I guess this is kind of like a country thing. And then I started listening to a lot of, obviously, Willie Whalen, etc., Johnny Cash, but Townes Van Zandt, John Prine, and I'd never given it a chance. I was one of those guys. I listened to everything but country. Yeah. And then I was, for pretty much 2 years straight, I only listened to country. And that obviously was influenced by moving to Texas as well. Of course. And even though I moved to Texas like during kind of like the lockdowns and stuff, for the most part Texas was open. And just going to the honky tonks down there and like fully like submerging myself, at least in the Texas version of it. Right. And I just kept going further and further back, and then that ultimately just led to me listening to Hank Williams for probably a year exclusively.
Dude, for me, I mean, it may have scared a lot of your fans, but for me, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. That like, And it felt like you did it for me.
Oh wow,
I
cool.
was just like, this dude that I love that does all this stuff that's not country and I would have assumed that you would have hated stuff I did. You know what I mean? Just based off
No.
what you put, I was like, if I ever meet this guy, he's probably not into country. And so then when I saw you do Texas Dream, I was like, what? So I think the first DM I sent you, it was after I listened to the record and just told you how much I loved it, and probably something along the lines of I'd love to work with you because
Yeah.
it was the truth. And then what would you say, like maybe 6 months after that I sent the DM, you read it?
Yeah, I am not a well, what it was is there was this story going around at the time. It was like T-Pain or some like big artist found out that you could filter your messages to see who's like verified or whatever,
Yeah.
or they by importance or what, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm
And
important.
well,
Very
so
important.
I think like I think maybe Chelsea had told me about that story, and I was like, oh, you can do that, and I looked, and yours was one of the ones in there, and I looked through, and I was like, oh, I'll check this stuff out, and that was my intro to you. I didn't know anything that you'd done up to that point,
Yeah.
and so maybe Slot Machine Syndrome had just come out.
Yeah, I think you had messaged me and said that you had like looked at my Instagram,
Yeah.
and listened to Slot Machine, and you really dug it. which
Yeah.
made me giddy.
It was I was in and you've been there. I was in the parking lot of HEB, and I was like, yeah, I'll give this a listen. I put like the first song on, and I just listened to the whole thing sitting in the parking lot, and which is rare for me. And I was like, oh wow, I wonder what it would sound like if we did something.
Yeah.
And it's like I think we all kind of have our own idea of what we're trying to make, and I'm delusional enough to where like Texas Dream to me, I was like, I made a country record.
Yeah.
But it's just as much like a dance record, I think,
I think it's all the things.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of different shades and flavors, even in what we consider country.
I think there's a version of, well, maybe, hopefully we do the next one, but I think it's a matter of, like, there's a version of what we made this time around where my first thought was like, oh, yeah, we'll just, go to, Nashville, or we'll cut it in Austin and do the whole thing live and have it be, my initial thing was I wanted to do kind of like what Daniel Romano did. I can't remember the name of the album, but it has Time Forgot to Change My Heart. That time forgot to change my heart. I can't remember. Something like that. Yeah. To change my heart. And it sounds to me, unless it was through like trickery and movie magic, but it sounded to me like they cut that live, most likely.
Yeah.
And I was kind of planning on doing something like that, and I was watching all these documentaries about just like the classic, like all the records that they cut in Nashville and Memphis, and just like the early, like the way they used to do it. And part of me with what we ended up with Southern Galactic, I know there's going to be the diehard country people who are, it's a classic, this isn't country.
Yeah.
And my kind of, because I don't want to come across as a producer who's never done country before, because I think it's kind of a thing for a lot of artists where then they get into Bob Dylan did it, or whoever along the way. Was it Cyndi Lauper who ended up? I saw her at like the Hollywood Bowl, and she did a whole show playing like the lap steel.
Oh yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah. But it's kind of almost like a trope where people go through their country phase.
Right.
And for me, it just became like it's just another tool in the toolbox, because I hear songs now. It'll be like electronic songs or like 80s like goth anthems, but you can strip it down and be like, if you perform this as a country song, it's like pretty much anytime you do any covers, it's like it makes sense.
The amount of songs by like The Cure that if I sit with an acoustic guitar and play them, it's like it's a country song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Just like Heaven, I think there's so much country DNA in other genres, and it would shock a lot of people who have never sat and listened. Because I get it, a lot of people, especially like under 30. Country to them is just what they've heard on the radio.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. I love country radio.
The whole boot stomp and snaps, and then trap beats,
Yeah.
and then the auto tune, and
Most people who hate country have never really listened to
Yes.
more than one flavor.
Yep.
You know, they've just had the one, and then they've sworn it all off.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it was, you know, going. We recorded this record at your home in Texas.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you felt, but I was so stoked and excited and felt really great about it, because I think naturally you assume when you love what someone does, and you know, I kind of knew the stuff you were into, and a lot of it's stuff I'm into. I had hopes that it would be a good working relationship.
Yeah.
But it was kind of I could go down there and we may be people who like a lot of the same things but just don't click creatively.
Most of the time it doesn't click.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
obviously you've had a lot more experience in this realm than I have, but I feel like we had a very quick, natural, creative
Yeah.
feng shui that went really well. You know, the whole
Yeah.
record felt very, very effortless, like to write, to record.
Yeah, it's a
It's the-
unicorn situation.
It's the most fun I've ever had making and writing music.
Yeah, it was
And-
definitely like top tier
Yeah,
environment.
And
yeah.
I think it benefits so much from you having a background in other stuff. Like we kind of have the same story, but in reverse. You know, like you were into all this stuff and got into country later on. I was birthed into the country and then got into like pop and pop punk and rock and
Yeah.
metal and all that stuff. And so it was cool to just see, just kind of myself, but different.
Yeah.
You know, and it gave me a lot of hope that I could one day be as smart and talented as Corey Mixter,
Just
the artist formerly known as Titanic Sinclair.
I always say I would say I've run out of mistakes to make.
Yeah.
Definitely not in life, but with production to a certain degree and making songs, writing songs, to where at least I know what makes me feel accomplished and good as a writer and a producer. And so that makes me, you know, if it's something where I'm working with you for the first time, I at least at the bare minimum know what I need to do to get something that probably feels like a record that I would make. And, you know, it was when we were initially just sending like voice memos back and forth and just song ideas and stuff. It was kind of nice doing it that way, like the remote, you know, modern way of doing it, because not that this necessarily would have happened, but a lot of times, like, I'm sure there's people, songwriters, you know, in the audience here, where it's people probably have been, even if it's just with a friend, you're like, hey, let's write a song, and suddenly it's 5 hours have passed, and you got maybe a couple chords and maybe an idea, and it's like, oh, bummer. But it was happening so fast with us. We were doing like, what, a song a day, pretty much, like back and forth.
Like 3.
Yeah.
I think there was a day where we did like 4 songs.
Yeah, and it was the first time in a while where I was writing too, and I was like, hey, check this out. And not knowing, especially at the beginning, we didn't even really know if we were going to just make an album or make one song or whatever.
Yeah.
But it became like glaringly obvious, I think, to both of us, where it was just like, yeah, we just need to do this.
Yeah.
And I like the way that we did it. It was very modern, you know, and I think that the way we did it, though, as a producer, especially when producing within a genre that I think most people would have trouble just as I do. I don't know exactly what genre this is.
Southern Galactic.
Southern Galactic, thank you. And but I know it's an amalgamation of all the things that I like on a production from a production standpoint, but certainly based on all the conversations we had, to where I wanted to make sure like I was doing my best to be of service in cradling the songs and hopefully making like an environment or a sonic environment or an atmosphere that doesn't put too much color as if it's a painting in one spot. It evenly disperses like all of the influence. And a lot of that was very fresh for me because you were sending me stuff that I had never heard, and a lot of it was like pretty like old school stuff, and that's kind of what gets me jazzed, you know, is like hearing little tidbits from, or, you know, songs that just, it's like, how did I miss this for this long, you know? It's just you never know what an album's gonna sound like. And that's something I actually learned from Johnny K, record producer from Chicago. He's the first producer I ever worked with, and it was cool working with him. And I kind of learned the thing, like the first couple songs you don't really know, but then suddenly you start to see a couple things throughout, like the through lines or like the skeleton of the entire project. And then so when you get to the finish line, you can go back to where you started and be like, oh, that synth thing that we did or this guitar tone that we found might be good. But I think we really kind of nailed it. And I felt confident and good because I knew, like you got incredible voice, incredible songs. So I knew that no matter what, if it was just an acoustic and one microphone, it'd be good.
Yeah.
And that is just... I'm very lucky to be at the point in my career now where I'm able to work on things that I like.
Yeah.
You know,
man, we just got a couple more questions because we don't have a ton of time today.
Right.
But hope to have you on again.
Of course.
And hopefully circumstances will permit very soon.
Yes.
But out of this whole Southern Galactic spiel, this whole era that we've made, what was the biggest surprise for you? And you may have touched on it already, but just from some kid you'd never met coming down to Texas to stay with you, what was the biggest surprise for you, whether it was in making it or all the mastering and mixing and stuff? What was your biggest didn't expect that thing?
There are artists in the world you don't have to auto-tune. No auto-tune at all, whole album.
You know,
well, typically I use Melodyne, but
there may be spots that could have benefited from it, but I'm thankful.
On purpose.
I'm thankful. Here's the thing, man. It's like you were saying, as far as like the whole genre thing, people saying like this ain't country. First and foremost, my dad doesn't really believe in country after 1985. When I was a kid, even the 90s,
Respect.
even Alan Jackson and Randy Travis.
Ooh, that's what I was going to say, AJ.
And I love that, of course, but when I was growing up, he's like...
Nope. Dwight Yoakam?
Dwight Yoakam's new country. We don't listen. His pants are too tight. We don't listen to him in this house. That was where I was at. But I played my parents this record, and I was nervous, you know, because some of the songs are kind of sexy, and some of them are called Got Stoned. And I'm showing my parents this, and I'm a little... I feel the moment I left Texas, and none of it was even finished, really, but I was like, I've won. I worked with someone I've looked up to. I'm so proud of what I made. I'm so proud of myself that I felt like I kind of kept up with you.
No, I'm very, very proud. I mean, just from not even coming in as like knowing my body of work, but just as a professional.
Yeah.
Because the first time you press record on a vocal take, you just don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. It's like...
But, dude, I played this record for my parents, just like the first mixes, and the look on their faces was worth everything I've ever done.
Amazing.
Like, just to see them be so excited about it.
Yeah.
I love it. And if my dad says it's country, then no one else really has a chance to say otherwise.
Let's go.
And I would also say that most of what we consider country is less country than this record. And I would also say, like you mentioned, Sturgill Simpson, the GOAT. He was like your introduction to country, and I think country as a genre deserves people who push the boundaries of it and what it is, and all genres do. But because there's a line where it's like you're just playing dress up. I don't want to pretend I'm Waylon Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to pretend I'm anybody. I want to do the stuff that I love, that I know is country, but more importantly, that I know is what I like and what is in me and wants to be let out. And I've loved all the projects I've done thus far, and I'm grateful for every producer and songwriter I've ever wrote with. But this is the first time where I'm like, dude, this is me. Like, if you cut me open, you would find this in it. Yeah,
I felt that in the early demos that you sent, the voice memos and all that. And, you know, it's funny, maybe it was like, it might have been the night before you got to Texas. I watched that documentary about, who's the guy who wrote The Chair, all the George Strait stuff.
Dean Dillon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had that at the dance hall the other night. They had that giant.
Yeah. Shout out to the Nashville Palace.
Yeah. I watched, there's a documentary about him, and it just reinforced all of because that's something with country as a genre. Like, I grew up playing punk rock, you know, like Detroit it was like that was the thing. And White Stripes had just, when I was in high school, White Stripes were like exploding.
Yeah.
And so, the reverence that I think I see people like, especially in the South, but definitely, Nashville, and I do see it in Texas, and I can only imagine in Georgia how that was growing up. There is I think reverence is the word for it, as a genre, because more than a music genre, it is kind of a lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
To where it's storytelling. And in a world now where it's all just copy and paste, yada yada yada, and I could go on and on for hours and hours about the lyrical content of most music these days. It watching that documentary and seeing all of the stories about how these just incredible songs came together, and these songwriters, and how they collaborated with different artists and producers and all that. It's like I felt like I was cradling like a very fragile object throughout the entire thing, where it's like you're doing a tightrope walk, because and one of the things they say in the movie is just about like pushing forward, and like is this country, in every wave. I mean, they said it about all the outlaw stuff, and in the 80s, same deal. Is this country, and it just continues to keep happening, and fingers crossed, we'll see. But I was hoping to be of service to country as a genre, a lifestyle, and a mindset, I guess is the best way, to where we're pushing boundaries and getting a little rowdy and crazy with some of like the production stuff, which is modern. But when you strip it all away, it's I feel like these songs that you wrote, like they could have been written in the 50s or 60s and maybe produced differently, but hopefully that feeling is what's maintained. And it's like I never looked at even dipping my toes into like producing country. I never wanted it to be like I never took it for granted, and I continue not to. In the same way with punk, and with the same with I love electronic, especially like just I don't know, industrial electronic stuff. And there's elements of that in here, but not enough to where it's just like using it for the sake of using it. It's always like, well, this kind of seems like the right idea for this part of this song. Yeah. And I feel I couldn't be happier with it, honestly.
Yeah, man.
Feels good.
Well, just to wrap up, I want to say in front of you and in front of the millions and millions and millions watching, thank you so much for being on the show today, of course. But more than
happy
that,
to be here.
After just, when my whole life kind of felt like it was falling apart, you were one of the first people that I reached out to just to write with me or do something with me. I never would have dreamt that we would make a record together. Mm-hmm. I never would have thought it would have been possible for me to make something that I'm so proud of. I don't think I could have done it with anyone else. You welcomed me into your home, into your family, and I'm proud to call you my producer, but even prouder to call you my friend. So before I cry, ladies and gentlemen, Titanic Sinclair, even better than him, Corey Mixture.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the pod.
Thank you. And the feeling is mutual.
I love you so much.
Love you, buddy.
Best friends forever.
Let's go chat.
And we love you. So subscribe, like, comment. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? And have a great day. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time. Watch Titanic Talks. Peace.